Good morning, everybody. Tammy from Homesteading in the City with Tammy. Today, we are in the kitchen. We are doing another canning video. It is going to be, I'm going to show you how to make and can relish. If that is something that interests you, stick around. Okay, I wanted to take a few minutes to thank everybody for supporting me. If you're new, welcome. If you've been here from the beginning, I really appreciate you coming by each week and watching the new videos that I put out. If you have not subscribed, please consider doing so. Get started with showing you how to make and process relish. So today's video, I'm gonna show you how to make some relish. The recipe that I'm using is, of course, from my bulk canning book that I use for everything, and it's just the cucumber relish recipe that I use. So the first thing you're going to do, and when you deal with cucumbers, whether you're pickling cucumbers or making relish, you have to soak them in a cold salt water bath for a couple of hours before you can finish the process. So cucumbers take a little bit of time to do. So it's one of those things that you want to do first thing in the morning if you plan on making your relish and stuff later that day and finishing the process in one day. You have to start it pretty early because it's usually a 3 to 4 hour soak in a cold water bath to allow the salt to bring out all of the liquid in your cucumbers so that you can have a drier base for your relish. So this is the recipe that I'm using, and I'll do a screenshot of this so you guys can see it in the video. But first off, we're going to do is we're just going to chop up our cucumbers and our peppers and our onions. I don't have any red pepper, so I'm not putting it in. It's just the red pepper is just for color in your relish. And then the other thing that I'm going to do, it tells us to get a cold water bath with salt. So I'm going to get my 2 quarts of cold water and my half a cup of salt, and I'm going to stick it in the thing and let it start to dissolve while I process my cucumbers and my onions and my peppers to get them cut down. Once I get that done, I'll show you how I do that, but the blender's a little loud to hear while we're processing, so I'll just show what I do and then the result of what it looks like. Okay, so I have my 2 quarts of water here, and I'm just going to put my salt in that water and get it to dissolve while I'm cutting up my cucumbers and getting them processed. Remember to use your canning salt or non-iodized salt when you do this process. So I'm just going to take my wooden spoon and just stir this around so that I can get that to dissolve. And then I'll just let it sit while I get my cucumbers ready to process. Okay, so I'm just going to take in my blender here, I'm just going to cut the ends off a little bit, the ends, just to make sure we get the little ends off. You probably don't have to, but I like to. And I'm just going to cut them into chunks. Let me get that down here so you guys can see how I'm doing that. Just cut them into chunks. It's good to add a little bit of onion and pepper through each batch that you do, just so that it mixes in good when you process it through the blender. That way you know you've got onion and pepper through everything, and it just makes it, they only call for 1 onion, so I'll just do some slices of onion in each batch. I probably am going to do 3 batches. And then I'll put 1 pepper in because I have 3 peppers. It was calling for 2 green and 1 red. Since I'm not going to use the red pepper for color, I'll put 3 peppers in for the taste of the flavor. And then just cut it into small pieces so that it just less chance of the processor not processing it all down to small pieces. The more work you do, the less the machine has to do as far as, and it'll make sure everything is uniform. So if you're putting everything in there about the same size, it'll come out the same size with the process. Okay, and I'll do one more cucumber in the top of that, and then I will process it. Okay, so once you have it all processed, you're just going to take it and pour it into a big bowl so that you can put the water in it and it'll sit in the water. This is when you can run your hands through just to make sure you have no big chunks of cucumber or onion or pepper that didn't process, and you can put them in the next batch. But you'll just keep doing that till you have it all mushed down, and then we'll put the water solution over it and I'll show you what that looks like. Of course, the first thing you want to do with your cucumbers once you pick them is make sure you get them washed and get all the little spines that are on them. There's the little pricklies that are on your cucumbers when they grow. Just make sure that you wash and get all those off just so that they're not in your relish. And then once you have it all cut down, this is what it looks like. And it is just a bunch of chopped up veggies, and it's pretty watery on its own. I haven't added the salt water brine to it yet. So once you do this, you just mix it up a little bit just to make sure that everything is mixed together since you did it in a couple of batches, and then just pour your salt water solution that they want you to make over top of it and just let it sit in that. Now it's got to sit in this for like 3 to 4 hours, which will allow it to dehydrate the cucumbers and get rid of all of the extra water. Then we will drain this in a cheesecloth and squeeze all of the water out, and then we will let it process again for another hour. So I will show you that step when we get to it. Okay, so 30 minutes before your processing time is done on your 4 hours, you want to get your next batch of water ready. It calls for another 2 quarts of water, because once we rinse this, we've got to let it sit for another hour in cold water. And what I usually do is I will fill my 2-quart jug almost all the way to the top with water, and then I'll put ice in there so that it makes it nice and really cold. After you drain and rinse your relish, you can put it in the cold water, and it will get rid of some of the extra salt that is in there, and it will also allow the really cold water will allow the cucumbers to kind of crisp up again so that they will be firm and for a firmer relish instead of a mushy relish. So go ahead and get that ready, and also at the same time you can get your pot out that you need to mix the brine with and get that put in and get that started on the stove so that it will be ready when you're done with that next hour. Okay, so now that we are done with the 4 hours is done, now we need to just strain the pickling solution that we have. Just get all of the water out of it, and I just usually use a strainer and just let it strain out in the sink. It'll take a little bit of time to strain it out, trying to get as much water off as you can. And then once you do that, you can add some more cold water onto it just to kind of rinse it a little bit. You just have to take it through your strainer and just, massage it around so the water can come out the bottom, as you can see that it's running out. And just roll it around. And there's a lot of water in here in this, so we just need to get it all out. And then I take my pot that I'm going to end up using eventually to do the pickling solution in. I take that pot and I will dump all of this once it's dry into the pot so that I can have that ready. And then once I empty this bowl out, I'll rinse this bowl out and I'll pour it back in there and let it sit with the water in it. The next batch of cold water that they want us to put in it. But the more you get this liquid out, the less salt that you're going to have on your stuff. As long as you can keep rinsing it, it'll allow to get some of that salt off. So this takes a little bit of time to do. And you just want to make sure you take your time and get as much liquid out. The more liquid you get out of your cucumbers is the thicker the less runny your relish will be. So, and this isn't we're going to have to do this again a second time once we rinse it with the cold water, but this will give a lot of it out. So that's all I do there, is just to kind of rinse it a little bit, and then I'll show you what it looks like once I've got it all rinsed and we're ready to put the new set of water on it. So even as much water as we took out, you can still see there's still liquid in this jar after I strained all this, and I got a lot of water out of here, but it's better than it was. So now they want you to pour the 2 quarts of cold water on top of it and in another bowl and let it covered for an hour. This will allow the cold water to crisp up the cucumbers and peppers and everything, crisp them back up again so that they're not mushy. That's why you want to do the ice cold water and have that ready so that when you put that in, it's really, really cold, and that'll allow it to stay. It'll allow it to bring it back to being crisp. So I'm going to put it back in that bowl that I had, and I am going to pour the cold water on top of it. Then I'm going to rinse this pot out, and I'm going to put the liquid that I need to use for pickling, and then I'm also going to take this cheesecloth that I have here, and I am going to put my spice mix into it. They say to put it in a spice bag. I usually just use 2 layers of a square of cheesecloth, put my spices in there, tie it up, and it goes in the pickling liquid that you have. And I'll just get that on the stove. I won't turn it on yet because I don't need it for a while. But just before I'm ready to bring, take this out of the ice cold water, I will start my pickling solution and do what I need to do there. So now I'm going to just put this into my bowl that I have, that I washed out, the one that I was using, and I will get that in there. So let's go over here. Okay. And then here is my, where's my spatula? Get everything out of my bowl here. Okay. And then take my cold water that I have. I've got ice in it still, and I don't want the ice in there, so I'll just pour it through my strainer here just to get the ice cubes out. I don't need them. And stir that all in so it will sit in there, and then they just want you to put a cover over this and let it sit in this cold water, and this will allow it to kind of crisp back up. Okay, so we're going to get our pickling solution ready for that, and that is 4 cups, a quart of vinegar, and a cup and a half of brown sugar. We're going to stir this together. It calls for 2 cinnamon sticks, and we'll put them in here. And this is where all of this will go, because the cinnamon sticks we can easily pull out once we have to start putting the relish in. The other thing I'm going to do is here on my mat I have my cheesecloth. And I'm going to, let's move that so you guys can see. I'm going to put my pickling solution, or my pickling spices, which is just allspice, mustard seed, and whole cloves. And I'm just going to put them in here, and then I'm just going to tie that up, and that sack is going to go into my vinegar and sugar water over here. That way when my spices are done, I can just pull this sack out and all of the spices are not in the relish itself. Okay, I have my sink full of water and I'll just turn that off. And then now my spices are all in here, and I will just put a rubber band or tie that up just so that most of the spices stay in there. And I'll just put that in my my vinegar water, and then that will put all the flavor that I need for the spices in my pickling solution. So you just want to make sure once you put the pickling solution in there that you stir it around so that you can get all of the sugar dissolved before you start heating it up. That way it doesn't leave a film on the bottom of your pot with the sugar in it, because it does need to get to a clear liquid before you start to can with it. So our recipe says to bring the spices, the vinegar, sugar, and spices, mix them all together in the pot and bring them to a boil, and then we pour them over our drained relish vegetables. They call them vegetables in the thing. So pour them over our vegetables and then let them stay covered for 10 to 12 hours. Then we're going to bring all of that back to a boil. So you can do that right in your pot. Once it's boiling, you drain your vegetables, and once the pot is boiling, let them put in there and then let them sit for 10 to 12 hours. Like I said, doing relish, it's not a quick process. It's going to take you probably 2 days to finish it. You start first thing in the morning to do the process and get everything done, or you can do it late in the afternoon and let it go overnight and then finish it the next day. So that's probably what we're going to end up doing, and we'll just finish it the next day, and it'll just sit in the brine overnight, which will allow it to pickle, and you'll have a good relish. And then once that's done, you'll bring all that liquid to a boil and reduce to a simmer until it is thoroughly hot. And then we can put it into we'll move all the spices, the spice bag and the 2 cinnamon sticks, and then we will put it in our jars. So we're going to rinse our vegetables and get them so that we've got our pot on over here, getting it ready to start boiling, and I will rinse the vegetables, and then we will put this into our pot over there and let it start to, once that boils, we'll pour the 2 together, and then we will have our stuff ready. So you want to get as much liquid as you can out of your vegetables. What I've done is I will take and put my tea towel in the bottom of my sink and dump my strained vegetables into that. And then I will wring them out in the tea towel to try to get as much of the liquid out. See how much I thought I'd had it all out. And look how much more liquid is coming out of this. The drier you get these vegetables, the thicker and the less runny your relish will be. So this is a good time to make sure you do the process of getting the water out of your vegetables. And it takes a little bit of time to get all this water out. So it's good to do this while your solution is getting warm so that you can put these vegetables into the brine that you need to set them in for 12 hours. So that's one of the ways I try to get rid of all my excess water, is putting it in a clean tea towel and just start squeezing it. I've used cheesecloth before, but a lot of the small pieces of the relish will start coming out of the cheesecloth. So this seems to work better. It you don't lose as much of the vegetables by doing a tea towel. Now that our pickling solution is boiling, we're just going to pour that over top of the vegetables that we have. Just give it a stir in so that everything can get in, the solution can get through all of the vegetables that are there. And we're going to let it sit in this for 12 to 18 hours before we can actually can this. So now that we have it done, we'll stick it in the refrigerator and let it sit for 12 to 18 hours. Now that you've had this sitting in the refrigerator for 12 to 18 hours with the spices in there, you can now take your spice packet and your cinnamon stick out of the container. This way you can, and then once you get those out, you can turn your burner on. We need to just bring this up to almost a boil. It doesn't really need to boil, it just needs to be hot so that we can put it in our hot jars and put it into the canner. It's a water bath canner because it is a high acid base product that we are doing. You do not need to pressure can this. You can water bath can this. So while this is being brought up to temp to be warm, you can get your water bath canner going. You can get your jars hot in the water and bring that all up to temp. I'm not going to show you how to water bath. That's in another video. You guys can watch that. I'll put another video linked below. You can see how to use the water bath canner. So once this is up to temp, I would just spoon it into my jars, put the seals and rings on there, and put it in my water bath canner and water bath it for the designated time that it says in my canning book. So that would be how you make and process your relish. Well, everybody, that is it for today's video. I hope you learned how to make relish. It is a long process, and it does take almost 2 days to try to do relish. It's one of those things that you start in the middle of the afternoon and you finish the next day. But it is worth having a homemade relish. It does taste a whole lot better than the stuff you get in the store. So that is all for today's video. If you like this video, please subscribe, hit the notifications and the thumbs up. And as always, if you have any questions, comment down below. I'm willing to answer anything. Have a good day, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.